We'll call this meeting in order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Councilmember Olson is absent this evening. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes or additions to the agenda as presented in the packet? No? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Dave. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Warren. Any discussion? Call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. Moving on to our minutes. We had minutes from 2 different meetings, the August 7th regular meeting and then the August 12th special meeting. Is there any corrections or additions to the minutes as presented? Staff, I did visit with Vicki and you made that one correction to the spelling. Okay. Typo on item 4 on page 1. Any other changes or corrections to the minutes? None? Then is there a motion to approve the minutes? We can take them in one motion for both if there's no changes.
I'll make a motion to approve both of them.
And a motion by Warren. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Any discussion? Call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. This time is our public open forum. Is there anybody here who wishes to address the council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. This is the first time I've ever addressed the council.
Okay, so just state your name and address.
I'm Diane Kelly, 418 2nd Street South,
Thank you.
Sauk Center. I just wanted to say, I know that you gave a permit to the VFW last weekend, for the band. Mm-hmm. And Saturday night was fine. But Friday night was extremely loud. We were getting calls all the way from Morning View Drive complaining. That's at the other end up by the cemetery. I think they were trying to wake the dead. It was really bad Friday night. I don't know who was the band leader for Friday night, but I hope in the future you put some kind of a decimal limitation on them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Anybody else wish to address the council? Anybody else wish to address the council? Hearing none, we'll move on then to our public hearings, which we actually don't have any public hearings this evening. We'll go right into our reports and presentations. We got our master park plan report.
Good evening, Mayor Kirchhoff and Sauk Center City Council. My name is Kate Lamers. I'm a landscape architect with Stantec, and I think, as you know, I have been working with your city staff and Splash Pad Committee on a master plan for your multi-purpose park. I'm going to take this off and come over to, if I can direct your attention to the PowerPoint. I'm going to go through this fairly briefly to kind of present the work that we've done on the park, and then you have some handouts that I left for you also that show a lot of the more detailed information that we're going to go through on the PowerPoint. So, as I've said, I've been working with the Splash Pad Committee. There's been, interest in an interactive water feature within the city for a while, and so that a splash pad, the idea for a splash pad, has arisen out of that. And so Vicki Willer, Nikki Vogt, Matt Wessel, Amy Trisco, and Minno Spidel have been exploring options. I think everybody recognized the need to do a master plan for the multipurpose park before getting into any real detail on the splash pad. And so tonight we're here to show you the results of that design process, and we have 2 resolutions that are in front of you. One, to update your master park plan with the master plan that we have designed for the multipurpose park, and then also to allow the Splash Pad Committee to move forward with their work into more detail on the splash pad. So in general, these are some of the criteria that we try to hit both in your master park plan and from your comprehensive plan to enhance natural resources through the design, provide recreational opportunities to all ages and incomes, really integrate options for different abilities to increase connectivity between your other parks and trails, and to make sure that we include things for teens. So currently, as you know, multipurpose park is fairly underutilized, even though there is some existing facilities, especially for teens. They're not really getting used to their potential right now. But the park, just kind of given its location and size, has a lot of potential to serve as a neighborhood park, as a community park, and also for the campground users across the street. So we'll get back to this in a little bit more detail, but here is a general overview of the master plan. The major features that it has are a parking lot, which is basically the existing parking lot, and a rain garden to catch the stormwater coming off of that, the splash pad, and an adjacent multi-purpose building that has a restroom, mechanical room, and picnic shelter, a picnic area adjacent to that picnic shelter, and a playground, sort of an open lawn. We couldn't keep all of the open green space, but we wanted to keep some for flexible use. The splash pad and the shade structures associated with that. And then we kept the existing basketball court and skate park. They're definitely in usable condition, and we're hoping that by bringing more users to this park and making it kind of a better park overall, that we can increase the usage on those facilities that you already have. The other thing is that we do have a connection to the trail that runs to the south of the park. It goes up, and also we feel like we can provide a better and safer connection to the campground across the street. So some of the basic design elements, we're looking at a traditional park aesthetic. One of the goals is to do some turf restoration and try and get that to be better quality, and have a fair amount of just kind of open green space that people can use pretty flexibly. We want to balance active and passive recreation. So active recreation, we have the splash pad, the playground, the open field, the basketball, and the skateboard. But as far as passive recreation, we can also, there's picnicking, there's walking on the loop trail, or just kind of walking off of the existing trail. We would maintain the horseshoes, at least 2 out of the 3. More seating, benches, picnic tables, and scattered around the park as well, so people who are walking have options to sit down and rest. And then also the open field would have flexible uses for more passive recreation opportunities. There's also room, if they were to decide in the future, to add like a shuffleboard court or possibly some other small amenities like that. Even though we don't get into detailed planting design at this level, in general, we stated in the purpose that we'd want to emphasize native plants, both for lower maintenance and for kind of better environmental value, more habitat. And the rain garden itself, too, which would use, mostly native plants, would add both beautification and, the function of dealing with the stormwater off the parking lot, which is up there at the very top corner. We wanted to provide water management opportunities, even though we'll discuss those a little bit more in the evening, for the water that may be coming off of the splash pad, and to allow places for expansion for things like both the water, possibly the splash pad in the future, and the parking lot. Certainly may need to be expanded sometime. So some of the elements, one of the main ones is the restroom, picnic shelter, mechanical room building. The most cost-effective way to do this is to combine it into one and kind of extend that picnic shelter off to one edge. And so that's why the building is sort of centrally located, where it can be shared by a number of spaces. The rain garden, we said we'd be looking to do as many native species as possible. We think that these can be beautiful as well as functional. And along the street there, where we've done quite a few, they're really usually very eye-catching, can mix a lot of colors and textures nicely into rain gardens. And this is an overall sketch. You should have this in your handouts of kind of what that space might feel like and how the size of the spaces relate to each other. This is looking kind of from an aerial view so that you get the entire park in the view. So just a little bit more about splash pads in detail. For anyone who's not familiar with them, they're a play feature with 0 standing water play area. They have interactive water play features, and they're user activated, so they only turn on when somebody hits a controller and turns the various sprays on, and then it cycles through preset options. So different features turn on and off, and they can run around the pads and to the different ones as they turn on. How you set them and how many go on at once and everything is something that you can change depending on how your controller is set up. They're becoming much more common as an alternative to swimming pools. There's no lifeguard required because of no standing water. There's no fencing required, although in some cases like this one, we do recommend one if they're a little bit closer to a busy road. And they typically have less cost and maintenance than a swimming pool. And we find that they have a lot of benefits. It's very interactive because, how you use it and how you change it changes the water sprays, and some features have kind of an increased level of interaction where you shoot them like a gigantic squirt gun at somebody else across the splash pad. They're definitely good for increasing physical activity for all ages. There's a lot of socialization that happens. They're kind of like a playground. They're a draw. They encourage people to play with each other and meet each other in kind of a confined space. And there's a lot of collaborative and interactive play that they have found in the way that kids use these. So one other thing about them is that because they're a hard surface, they're very appropriate for kind of all different abilities. You can certainly wheel a wheelchair across it. They're a good way for somebody who is in a wheelchair, has some other physical disabilities to be able to enjoy the water as well. So often, this is this kind of Mickey Mouse head, which you'll see reflected in our master plan design, is a recommended way to lay these out where you have a larger family bay that gets kind of used by everybody. You have a teen bay off to one side that has kind of the higher energy, more interactive bar spraying features, and then a toddler bay, which is characterized by smaller features, gentle sprays, and also it's just a place that's not quite as high intensity because you're not mixing the toddlers with the teens as much. One of the things, too, as far as a splash pad is, we find that they tend to be a draw, just like almost any water feature where people are naturally drawn to water. But you can't put in a splash pad by itself. You want to have a nice park around it. You want to have shade. You want to have restrooms, lawn, oftentimes sunbathing lawn, which we included here. Other park amenities are good to have with it, and just kind of general park beautification. It kind of goes along with any other park. People are drawn to nice parks, and this is one of many amenities that will draw them there. We kind of talked about why Sauk Center, and looking around, you don't have a lot of splash pads nearby. There's some in St. Cloud, there's one in Waite Park, but otherwise you are going to the Twin Cities metro area or Fargo. And looking at the communities nearby without splash pads that are within reasonable driving distance, there's quite a few. So we see this as being something that can certainly bring people to Sauk Center. And the location is close to downtown. The trail, runs right over there. It's got kind of a good vehicular and pedestrian connection. It's also, I think, good timing. Splash pads, you're still kind of new and unusual, especially just looking at all these communities without them, although we've heard that Little Falls is looking into one. But they've been around long enough that the bugs are kind of worked out of the system. You have a lot of different manufacturers, pretty good quality equipment. It's competitively priced at this point, so there's a lot of options. And they've certainly become very popular in a lot of facilities in municipal parks these days. We get a lot of questions about splash pads. They certainly started in a lot of the larger communities, but we did have a public meeting as part of the park board meeting 2 weeks ago, and some of the questions that people ask us were, what about small communities comparable to Sauk Center? Is this an appropriate type facility for a community our size and our location? So we don't have a great way to check into every single splash pad in the region, but checking with several of the main manufacturers, we were able to come up with this list, and this is just the towns that we were actually able to make a connection with and talk to somebody in Wisconsin, Michigan, Canada. There's quite a few communities. These are all at least 30 miles from a metro area, some of them farther, that have fairly small populations. Some of them haven't been open for more than a season. They just opened 2013. Some have been in for a few years. And they all basically said, that they're happy they did it, and they all used the same word to describe it, and that was packed in general. And they did say that there were quite a few people that were coming from neighboring communities to their communities to use the splash pad. They also, a lot of them mentioned that even on cool days, the splash pad sees quite a bit of use. So we do feel like it's something that is happening more and more in small communities. So we feel like, with both the master plan design and the splash pad, that, we're really meeting the City of Sauk Center's goals as far as providing community members with green space, connecting people with the outdoors, improving the connectivity between your existing parks and trails. All of these opportunities provided in the park are free for people to use, and they don't take a whole lot of equipment or something for them to take advantage of. We feel like it's these opportunities in this park are very accessible. It's a good amenity for attracting tourism to the community and the economy. And it's good for the campground, especially with no swimming. You know, currently in Sauk Lake, people associate water use and camping quite a bit. So we feel like the splash pad makes the campground more attractive. And the bottom line is that we feel like it could bring a lot of people to Sauk Center to use the park and to come to your downtown and generate your economy. So this is just a picture of the master plan again. If you want to refer to it, it's the same one that you have in front of you, but I guess I'd open it up for any questions at this point.
Any questions of council at this time in regards to the presentation? I know we have two action items in tonight's agenda that we can talk specifically about, whether the plan as well as the next steps for the committee to move forward in regards to this the splash pad concept. But is there any questions for Kate in regards to the presentation?
I don't have
None?
any.
I don't have any. All right, I guess we don't have any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
I think almost all of us were at the last presentation as well, so we've seen this a few times, or a couple times now, so that's great information. We'll move on then to our police department monthly report. Brian?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Activity report for July 2013. Some of the numbers we had, 6 alarms, 45 assists for other agencies, 23 citizen contacts. We had 1 second-degree methamphetamine arrest. We had 1 fifth-degree cocaine arrest. We had 8 dog complaints. We had 4 small amount of marijuana arrests, 7 juvenile problems, 20 matter of information calls, 16 medicals, 10 driving without a Minnesota license, 9 accidents, 12 suspicious calls, and we had 19 thefts. We had 235 verbal warnings, and you see how they're broke down there, and we had a total number for activity of 662. So compared to July 2012, we're, as far as calls, we're up 68 calls, and we're down 31 for verbal warnings. And then by month, compared to last month, we're up 38 calls, and we're down 11 verbal warnings. So we had St. Clair Lewis week. Yeah, that went very well, I thought, overall. I didn't see too many issues. And then, of course, we had the fair in town, Stearns County Fair, and I believe that went pretty well also. So no major incidents during either of those community events.
Brian, in regards to your request for extra patrol, is that request from other departments or request from people, or what's that request?
For extra patrol?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically people in the community asking to step up patrol in their area.
Their area? Okay.
Yeah, you know, for driving conduct or what have you. So most of it's for driving conduct.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for Brian? None? Thank you, Brian. I know the guy spent a lot of time at the events last month, so I'll make sure we thank them for their work. I think they did an outstanding job. Like you said, there was very few events. It shows that we were out and people were aware that we were around, so.
Yep, thank you.
Moving on to the Planning Commission report, Sarah?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packet, you have a copy of the Planning Commission agenda from August 13th. We had a short meeting. There were no public hearings or action items. We will be having a public hearing in September. And an informational item, I finally have scheduled a date for the fall cleanup, the scrap metal day, which will be September 20th, Friday, from 8 a.m. till 7 p.m., and Saturday, the 21st, from 8 a.m. till noon.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Sarah?
I noticed that under new business setbacks was on there. Are you
We will be discussing that. That'll be up at a public hearing when we have our meeting in September, just to consider and review if any changes are warranted on the setbacks.
Okay. I guess I'd just like to, I actually liked Councilman Olson's suggestion that be a percentage of the building. I'd like to see that pursued or at least checked
Okay.
out.
We can do that. Thank
Any
you.
other comments? I'm assuming that when you put this in your August, it was just to inform the planning and zoning that that's planned to be looked at in September? Or did you
Yes.
guys actually
Well, we had
discuss
some
it?
discussion, but the public hearing will be set for September.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
The percentage you were talking about is on the,
In the
Fines
event
or-
in the event of a
Very-
deficiency, that the builder be assessed a percentage.
For a fine, for the
For a
fine or
fine.
violation, okay.
Be assessed a percentage of the structure's value.
Okay,
Okay. You can look at that as a consideration.
yep.
certainly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, we have no other reports and presentations. We'll go into our action items. Approve the amendment to the master park plan. Vicki?
Okay, you have the first item of it is the, like you said, the amendment to the master park plan, and you did see the brief presentation by Stan Tech earlier this evening, and you also received in your packet the text of the proposal. I broke it into two parts. You've got the part in the staff report is, it has the old plan with the strike-throughs and the new language underlined, and then the pages following are what the final text would actually look like. So you've got two sections. You've got the inventory of parks in the master park plan, the section one, the first part, and then the second part is the proposed improvements section. So I don't know if you would like me to read what the final language would be for that, or if you've had the opportunity to review that ahead of the meeting. But what we're asking for tonight is to amend the master park plan to insert this language in place of the existing paragraphs. The main parts that are changed, of course, include what could happen in that park. It's not the entire park system, but just that park.
Any questions? I think, Vicki, maybe just for the general public's information, I will read through that and read it over so that everybody understands what we're specifically looking at the changes for. And again, we are changing the language that currently was Sinclair Lewis Ballpark, which is now called the multi-purpose park. And so I'll just go through your changes is what it would read pending approval if we approve it this evening. And the multi-purpose park is a 3.16 acre community park located in District 1 across the street from the Sinclair Lewis Park and Campground. Formerly a ballpark, the area now contains a skateboard park, a basketball court, horseshoe pits, a gravel parking lot, and open field. Since it was a ballpark with open fields, there are a few trees in the park. Redevelopment suggestions include a splash pad area, a multi-use building combining restrooms, mechanical room, and an open picnic shelter, a playground, a shuffleboard court, an internal trail system, open play area, picnic and park seating, and upgraded landscaping, including trees, restored turf, a rain garden, and plantings for general beautification. In the previous master planning process, construction of a low-maintenance mini golf course with rental or golf clubs and balls for the campground manager was discussed as an added amenity for campers and the community. While the community survey suggested an interest in outdoor swimming pool at this location, the park board did not feel it would be beneficial or financially feasible to include in the long-range plan, given the number of other parks and projects also requiring park funding. And then in section D, it goes to include proposed park improvements, which is paragraph 2, is recommended to be amended as follows. Item 2 being now listed as the multi-purpose park proposed improvements. Turf is in poor condition and in need of restoration. Park development suggests include keeping the existing skate park and basketball court and maintaining 2 or more horseshoe pits. Installation of a sign consistent in theme with other municipal parks is recommended. Redevelopment suggestions are shown on the multi-purpose park master plan graphic and include the installation of a splash pad area that serves multiple ages, a multi-use building combining restrooms, a mechanical room, and an open picnic shelter. a playground, a shuffleboard court, an internal trail system connecting to the regional trail, open play area, picnic and park seating, and upgrading landscape including trees, restored turf, a rain garden, and plantings for general beautification. It goes on to say, potential improvements that have been discussed but were not shown on the plan include a sand volleyball court and small wading pool. The site would accommodate a volleyball court and a small wading pool, however, they were not included in the proposed design as the committee felt that the open field was desirable and flexible amenity. If the community requests additional features, they could be determined on a case-by-case basis. In the previous plan, this is just a little bit of information. In the previous plan, construction of a low-maintenance mini golf course was again, course with rental of golf clubs and balls from the campground manager was discussed as an additional amenity for campers in the community. While the community survey suggested an interest in an outdoor swimming pool at this location, the park board did not feel it would be financially feasible to include the long-range plan, given the number of other parks and projects also requiring park funding. So basically, that would be the new language that would be listed in the inventory of park section of the master park plan and in the sections as I mentioned. So I think we're just upgrading some language of our master park plan to include some of the options that the committee as well as the community has asked and looked at. Again, we're not, there's not a request to go out and build all these things. I'm guessing that'll come at a later time, but right now it's a matter of just approving the master park plan, multi-purpose park section of the plan itself. That, is there any questions of staff? Vicki, did I miss anything or need to add anything?
No, I just wanted to say for everybody that was listening that it sounds somewhat redundant, but these were things that were getting inserted in multiple places in the plan, so
Right.
the same language keeps going in different areas. So if you heard the same thing twice, it was intentional. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, what's the wishes of council? Is there a motion to approve the updates to the Sauk Center master plan as presented?
So move.
A motion by Warren, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Keith. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'll call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. At this time, we'll move on to approve the splash pad committee and park board to continued development. Vicki?
Okay, now that you've done the amendment to the multi-purpose park plan, now that that's been modified, the park board's requesting that the splash pad committee continue its work in developing a plan for a splash pad with related amenities. I did list in here actually 15 items that I would suggest the council could direct the committee to complete several tasks to bring back to the council for consideration. And some of these things you've seen in the presentation, we've talked about them before, but I thought it was important just to outline them so they could have a checklist. Some of the things that we wanted to talk about again was how many people is it going to be served, who are the users, how will it benefit Sauk Center from an economic and recreation standpoint. We're hoping they can put a little bit of numbers to that. You know, we want to see, you know, break it down more. What is the splash pad size? How many play elements are we talking about? How does it expand? We'd like to see a building schematic with a graphic. We'd like to see how is the irrigation, is there a shade tree plan, landscaping, lighting, you know, kind of develop this plan a little bit further, how they plan to connect it to the trail. The shade structures, tables and benches, you know, there's so many kinds out there. Are we having some kind of a theme? How are they going to address safety in a storm, lightning, that type of thing? And then, of course, the recommended water source and water discharge. Those are two things they've talked about quite a bit. We need to talk more seriously now about the utility connections, water, sewer, and electric. We want to talk about long-term maintenance and staff. You know, once it's built, that's all fine and good, but what's it going to cost 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And then we'd like to see an expense budget, how you're planning on expending it, but then also a revenue budget, how are you planning on paying for it? And then also, what is a realistic timeline to make this happen? So this is a big laundry list of items that we think that the committee and the park board can work on and have this information available for the city council and the public. There may be some approvals or considerations that may happen along the way as they want guidance and direction maybe from the park board and the council. But I think this is a good start to get them started. And so what we're asking tonight, and what the Park Board is asking tonight, is that the City Council authorize and direct the Splash Pad Committee to continue with Phase 1 of the Splash Pad project and bring the above items back to the Park Board for recommendation to the council.
Okay.
And if you have more things that you think that need to be answered at this point, we can add them.
Any questions? I can say I had a chance to visit with Vicki in regards to this, and I think we all are in agreement that the current facility is underused, and I think there's a lot of space there and a lot of opportunity. But I think we can all say that we're all comfortable that we can probably raise funds to build facilities, but what about maintaining them? And that was one thing that I spent a lot of time with Vicki is I really, personally myself, I want to see the 5, 10, and 20-year plan about how this facility, if we were to move forward with it, is going to be funded. If it's going to be just a general line item in the Park Board's budget, that's fine, but that needs to be there. And I need to understand how it's going to be maintained going forward. So I think the overall plan and certainly the concept to me looks great. I 100% agree that there's a lot of opportunity there. Having a water amenity in the community is, I think, extremely valuable, and I support the concept. All 15 of these to me need to be answered with clarity and with planning so that when we do move forward and we do make the decision to invest the hundreds of thousands of dollars that this potentially could take, and I know we're going to look at ways of raising funds to help offset these costs. I just think the 15 is a start, and there will probably be more questions as we move forward, but certainly this would be an area for them to be able to, and the Park Board to look at as well, to give us good information to the council so we can make a sound decision when the time comes. Does any council member have anything they would like to add, or any comments or anything?
I think the list is a good place to start. Like you said, there's going to be a lot of questions, once we get into different things when they present it. Not to go ahead and continue with this Phase 1 would be kind of like letting them do a lot of work for nothing right now without having all the answers put in front of us black and white. So that's my opinion, but I definitely think we got to give them a chance.
Definitely. Anybody have any thoughts?
No.
Hearing none, is there a motion to direct the Splash Pad Committee to continue with Phase 1 of the Splash Pad project and bring above items back to the Park Board for recommendation to the City Council?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Keith, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Warren. A motion and a second, is there any discussion? I'll call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. Thank you, and I'd like to thank the committee as well as the Park Board for all the work they've done so far. All right, well, moving on to C, approve amendment to bylaw, Sauk Center Fire Department Relief Association. Vicki?
I'm going to give you a little brief update here, and then Don John from the Fire Relief is here to address the council. What they're asking for is an amendment to the bylaws, which would be approved by the City Council. The Fire Relief, now this is separate from the Fire Department. They operate to provide for the retirement of its volunteers. The Relief Association also conducts charitable gambling, and in that charitable gambling, you recall, we get donations back to the city that is like for capital purchases for equipment. Funding for the relief is mostly derived from state aid. State aid, it's a portion of the insurance paid by your homes and businesses, and then that money comes back to the city, and that goes into the fire relief. And then they have revenues from contributions from like the city and also from investment income. So that's kind of what the funding source for all of this money is. Each year they do reports with the state auditor. There's formulas and calculations, and Don John will be able to explain that in more detail if you have questions. And it just basically says if you're funded at a certain ratio, everything moves forward. And so right now they have a funding ratio or a funding where they get so much dollars per year of service at the time they retire. And right now that amount is set at $1,550. And they're requesting an increase in that amount. There's been several years, I think since 2007, since they've had an increase in that amount. They're coming before the City Council tonight, and they're requesting that number go to $1,675. And Don does have some reports, I think, that he was going to give you that kind of shows or backs up some history for that, and then you'll be able to ask him questions. So I don't know if you have any more questions of me, or if you just want to let him come up and address you and kind of give you some numbers, and I think you have a handout. Where'd he go? Oh, he's right there. He has a handout for you, and kind of run through those numbers quickly, and if you have questions, he can answer them. If you don't, we can just move forward, so.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. Don?
Thank you, Vicki. Mayor, Council, one-page handout?
Yeah, if you could hand it out. An extra one for me, please. Thank you.
Well, Vicki did a wonderful job of explaining that. So what you have in front of you, if maybe you just kind of look at line 8, and we'll get back to the top couple lines. But below that is the historical information for our Relief Association. And like Vicki said, we get money from the state of Minnesota and from the municipal contribution. That's our funding source. And over the years, that builds up, and we use that to do a pension for the firefighters. And so the information below there is the historical information. As you can see in column M, where it says change from previous year, the relief benefit has been consistent at $1,550. And prior to that, you can see the increases that have occurred. You have history here that goes back to 1987, so about 26 years. And the primary reason for the stagnation or the lack of increases in the pension since 2008 was a couple-fold. One is the state aid, the amount of money that comes into these relief associations, has declined about 30% since 2006. And as Vicki mentioned, it's a percentage of the fire-related insurance premiums that are paid in your fire district. So while our homeowners and business owners insurance has kind of gone up, that's mostly due to hail coverage and wind premiums and those kinds of things, not to the fire, the actual fire losses. And then as building increases decline too, that total contribution that's been coming into the pensions has decreased. And then we also had a market decline. We have about $600,000 of assets, and about 40% of that is invested in bond and stock mutual funds, pretty consistent with the relief associations, and that experienced a decline in that same time frame. Because of that, it decreased our funding ratio, which is we measure the total assets that we have set aside to cover the future liabilities of our retirees. You can see that in column O. It reached the low point in 2008 of 74%, which meant that we were short to cover any future liabilities until our assets regrew from the income that we get from the state and from our investment performance. You can see as you move forward then towards 2012, we finished the year in 2012 at 98.17%. So pretty close to 100% coverage at that point in time. So if we can go to the top portion of that sheet then, the items that I have highlighted in yellow are the ones we'll talk about, but line 2 just shows our current projections based upon June of this year with our assets and our projected liability with no pension increase. That would be line 2. That would show our pension ratio at 98% and pretty much a 1-to-1 coverage. Item B is the request that we have in front of you. It's to change the pension from $1,550 to $1,675. That'd be an approximate 8% increase. And keep in mind that's spread out over the last 6 years. The funding ratio of assets to liabilities would be at 91.7, about 92%. And the difference between the projected assets and the future liabilities would be about $61,000. Now, because that shows negative, there are calculations that the state auditor requires us to do to determine if that would require the municipality to make a contribution. And the way the formula works is generally if the negative amount is less than the total income that comes in from our investments and from our state aid, it will not require a municipal contribution. So in all these cases, there is no projected municipal contribution required. Line C, we have about a third of our department currently is eligible for retirement. That means they're over 50 years of age and have over 20 years of service. And I think they stick around because it's a great group of people and they really like what they're doing. But we also ran a scenario where we projected what if 4 retirees would be eligible for their pension and take it, reducing our assets, what would that do to the numbers? And that's line 4. And it shows that the funding ratio would fall just a little bit more, but the pension liability would stay pretty much consistent, actually a little bit less negative at $54,000. That's still well within our projected annual income between our investments and our state aid. And again, by calculation, did not show a municipal contribution being needed. And then for a further testing of it, we said how high could it go before the state auditor's formula would indicate that a contribution would be required. And just for data purposes, the pension could be increased to $1,725 or an additional $50 per person per year. On the far right side, that would show a small municipal contribution projected of about $1,000. And then the last one, line 6, is what we call our outer marker. It's the maximum pension that is allowed for a department of our size with 30 members based upon our last 3 years of average income. And that number by state statute could be as high as $2,700. And every department runs that same calculation every year, and it's different for every department depending on their state aid, their municipal contributions, and their just those two columns, just those two components, divided by the number of members they have. As you can see, we're quite a ways away from that outer marker, but it's a way to kind of show the far right side of what the calculation could be. And that would create, in no way are we recommending or suggesting anything like that, but you can see the numbers are quite a bit negative there.
Okay. Any questions, Don? Don, just a couple comments, and I know you did an outstanding job explaining what happened from 2008 to 2012, but I want to just go back and note that it looked like there was 5 consecutive years prior to that we met the criteria, and we came to the council for a recommendation for an increase, and it was increased all of those times. Matter of fact, I look back, has there been a time when the council has denied an increase to the Relief Association?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
I've been on since '92, but I'm not, the whole board's here.
I don't think, okay. And so the council's always certainly very much supported the relief in what they're, first of all, you're working with a tremendous amount of money, and we're fortunate to have a department that has people that have certainly have the interest and the ability to manage a portfolio like that, because I mean, I know it's not the millions, but it's certainly a large amount of money that constantly is being moved around to make sure we get the best return. So it goes to show, even during some of the toughest years, and it isn't just this relief, it's across the country.
Sure.
It was a very difficult time. We still were able to maintain with a minimum amount of contribution on the city's part. So I just wanted to note that. I would encourage the department, as you look at these numbers on an annual basis, to try to be consistent with a recommendation on an annual basis back to the council, whether it's even a minimal of $25 or $50, rather than, even though the numbers show now that we could go to $175, and I appreciate your coming with $125. I just think it's good for the council to understand that, there's always been this commitment by the council, and there's a fair chance that there are dollars that the Relief Association should be and could be getting on an annual basis, rather than waiting that timeline. So.
Yeah, I think those years were very unusual. If you look at the whole 26-year history, you'll see a fairly reoccurring pattern of smaller increases. And I think going forward, things have stabilized quite a bit, and I think that's an excellent suggestion to run these scenarios and even smaller increases on a more regular basis. But in those years, it just really wasn't practical to present it.
Understand. Thank you. Is there any other questions for Don? Anybody? None? We have a request before us this evening to acknowledge the Fire Relief Association's increase in the benefit amount from $1,550 to $1,675. Vicki, do you actually need that in an action probably that we approve? Okay. So if that's the wishes of the council, I'll leave that to you guys for a motion if you so choose.
I'll make a motion to acknowledge that increase.
I have a motion by Warren to acknowledge the Fire Relief Association's increase in the benefit amount from $1,550 to $1,675. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion? I have a motion and a second. I'll call the motion then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Aye. Motion carries. 3 in favor, none against, 1 abstention. Thank you. Moving on to action item 7D, approve lease agreement, airport and Milner.
As part of the airport operations, the city leases land to Dennis Muehlner for farm purposes. His lease has a number of provisions, including allowing the public utility to land apply sludge from the wastewater treatment plant at varying intervals. In exchange for this flexibility, he's allowed to use a portion of the land free of charge with the reduced rate applied to the balance of the acreage. Now, when I say free of charge to him, then the public utility then pays us a lump sum. So those two kind of get added together. Currently, the rate is $50 per hour. We're recommending that it be increased to $75 an hour for 2014, $85 for 2015, and $95 for 2016. The total acreage leased is 103.3 with the 39.2 acres at no charge. Again, that has to do with the sludge application. So the balance of 64.1 acres at $75 is $4807.50. Now we have additional land that we rent at the airport at $100 an acre. So to go to 75, 85, and 95 brings it a little bit more in line with that other acreage. Although we don't land apply on that, it just kind of brings it a little more in line. So what we're asking is that we enter into this land lease agreement. It's for a 3-year period with that ratcheted up rate.
All right, any questions of staff?
The airport board looked at this and it's their recommendation, or?
Actually, the Muehlner one is negotiated by the public utility.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions? None? Is there then a motion to approve the amendment to the lease agreement for Muehlner with 39.2 acres at no charge and 64.1 acres at the 75, 85, 95 for 2014, 15, and 16?
So moved.
Motion by Dave. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Warren. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Is there, so this would lock Mr. Muehlner in for those 3 years? There's no option out, or?
He could option out. I mean, we can open this up at any time, but he's been very good to work with, so there's a lot of flexibility there.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Any other questions? None? I'll call the motion then. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor. None against. Moving on to Action E, Resolution 2013-58, ordering feasibility report for the 2014 street improvement Pendergast.
The reason that this is on the agenda is, if you recall, last fall we had a public hearing on an improvement for a petition that we received for Pendergast Street, and then this spring the City Council decided not to move forward at that time, but had directed us to bring it back in the fall for reconsideration. So fall is here. Because if we decide to move forward with it as a potential 2014 project, I put this on the agenda so that we could call the hearing, or at least approve a resolution updating the feasibility report. And technically what that would do then is have the city engineer basically refresh the numbers on this. We're not looking really for any design changes or anything, just that the numbers need to be updated to make sure that they're at the going market rate. If we do want to do this, I'd like to get the feasibility report back as soon as possible, because then in September we would call the public hearing for the first part of October. So that's kind of sometime in October, we'd like to get the hearings done, because if we're going to move forward, we want to get into design and surveying and everything before snow falls. So I hate to talk about snow, but this is kind of the timeline that you're on when you're doing these projects. I did talk with Keith, and he said the cost to refresh the numbers and bring this report back to the council would be about $650. So what we're looking for here is to approve this resolution ordering the feasibility report.
Any questions? I think we certainly are in a position that if we are going to move this project forward and for the minimal dollars to have Keith update this, it would certainly warrant that. I believe, I wasn't on when you guys had gotten all the numbers, and I think it's be good information for me as well. And on that will move us into the next phase of having the public hearing, and again, encouraging those that are either in favor or against of this project to come before the council so that, one, the new council can hear what their thoughts are, and two, we can make a decision, and either one, we're going to do this thing or we're going to take it off the docket, because we have to move forward. We either got to do it or we're not. And I know staff is continuing to, set this on the burner for us to make a decision. But I think now we have a timeline, we have an opportunity here to just make a decision. And once we get the numbers back and we get the public hearing gone through again. So with that, I would ask the council to approve a resolution 2013-58 ordering the feasibility report for Pendergast Street from the end of the pavement to dead end and Oak Street. Vicki, we didn't talk about that.
Nope, take that part off.
Okay. So
It's two
stop
separate
there.
actions.
All right.
Two dead end, period.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to move forward with the feasibility report?
So moved.
Motion by Dave, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Warren. And I'm just going to redo the motion. The motion is to approve the resolution 2013-58, ordering the feasibility report for Pendergast Street from the end of pavement to dead end. All right, any discussion?
The only thing is I'm not certain that if this does, after the feasibility, if it doesn't happen, if it won't come back up again, basically because it's on the capital improvement plan to get rid of all the existing gravel roads. So
And it may.
to say it might go away, I don't know if it'll actually happen.
Right, and I understand that, but I think what we got here is we got a petition to request to do it, so that part of this process can be addressed, and we can answer not only the folks, but staff on how to do with that. And if a new petition comes forward, or if the council believes we're moving forward with our capital projects that address that road at that time, then that's a whole nother issue. So, all right, any other comments?
That was just mine too. This doesn't slam the door shut on
Nope.
that capital improvement. Okay.
Okay, with that, no other questions, comments? I'll call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. All right, now we'll move on to Resolution 2013-59, ordering the feasibility report for the 2014 street improvement on Oak Street. Vicki?
Right, in addition to the Pendergast improvement, we've got Oak Street South, which goes from Sinclair Lewis Avenue out here to 2nd Street, actually through 2nd Street. That's been at the top of our improvement project list for some time, and it kind of keeps getting pushed back because it's just it's a one-block project. And so because it has been talked about kind of many times over the years, we thought that might be something that could be coupled with Pendergast to just have a small project next year. The other reason that it came back up is the public utility has recently identified that they have a leak in their water main or a service line in the 2nd and Oak intersection. It's going to require excavation and repair. They don't know how extensive that is going to be, but they're asking if the city is going to be moving forward with this project, because they have some decisions to make. If we're going to go forward with the project, they'll wait and repair it in conjunction. If we're not going to go forward, they're going to open it up and they're going to have to make that repair. If it's a service line repair, it'll be the responsibility of the homeowner. If it's a main line repair, it would be the public utility. So for those reasons that I've stated above, we put it on here for your consideration. If the city council wants to initiate it as a project, to do it in conjunction with Pendergast. If we want to move forward with getting the numbers, we would need to have a feasibility report, should be ordered to be considered at a future meeting. So I do have Keith Yap here. He's familiar with the project. We talked about it very briefly. I think you gave me a dollar amount, but I forgot what it was. Okay. The cost to bring this to the council in a feasibility report form would be $5,500, which then, of course, that goes into part of the project cost. But I wanted you to be aware that that's a cost that we would realize for him to go in there and identify all the issues. And it's not design, but it's everything that we need to take it to the next level. So I did put a resolution in the packet, 2013-59, ordering the report if you so choose.
Vicki, in regards to Oak Street, when is that on our capital improvement plan?
It was for 2008, 9, 12, and 14.
So it's another one of those streets that is in dire need of work that we've pushed off for far too long?
Some would say so, yes.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Is there any questions of staff? Again, we're looking at an investment of $5,500, and one of the thoughts that I had as I started looking at these projects, we've done a lot of large projects. We've done Ash Street, we've done 4th Street, and we've taken care of a lot of street work. And one of the comments that I made to Vicki is at some point we're going to take some time off and try to relieve all of these projects. However, if streets need to be repaired, they got to be repaired, and you have to maintain them, and I get that part of it. And we're talking 1 block versus 10 blocks in some cases. So, I'm not opposed to doing the feasibility report and getting the report back to the council so we can make a sound decision on this project. But I just want us to know that we continue to take on more and more improvements in streets, which is part of what we need to do. But I think we got to try to control that as well as we look at the expenses that we continue to take on by these improvements. And maybe we do a certain dollar amount a year, or we do so much every 4 years or 2 years or whatever that number is. But I just want us to keep that in mind is we've taken on a tremendous amount of cost over the last 5 years on street improvements. Part of maintaining the city too, so I get that.
Main deal is we've got a lot of roads that were all tarred in, since 1975, they're all 25 years or more old, and they're all coming to that reconstruct age all at the same time. So that's kind of a problem that
it's unfortunate of a problem, kind of self-created.
Yeah,
so I get that.
So
very good. With that, what's the wishes of the council? I ask for a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2013-59.
Okay, we have a motion by Warren. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. We have a motion to approve resolution 2013-59, ordering the feasibility report for Oak Street South from Sinclair Lewis Avenue through the 2nd Street South intersection. Is there any further discussion?
If both of them are approved, then we'll tie them together, but otherwise they're going to be handled separately, right? So if Pendergast doesn't happen, Oak Street still could.
They could happen, but if we do them both, we can get some economy in numbers, I think.
Right, okay. That's it.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, I'll call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. Moving on to action item G, order attorney to proceed with hazardous building action.
Okay, we've got, remember the prior meetings that we had where the city attorney came about the hazardous buildings, and so we went through the vacant home, getting the vacant home secured, and that's all been taken care of now, so we've got that. And now the next step, we wanted to basically empower or direct the city attorney to obtain legal access to conduct inspections, like with the fire chief, building official, and possibly an appraiser, to determine whether they are indeed hazardous, and also to determine if they can be brought up to code or if they should be condemned and demolished. 3 of the initially identified homes have been sold. The addresses of the remaining homes, and we have them listed there at 331 Maple, 625 Getty, 200 North Ash, 1034 Getty, 332 Birch Street North, and 200 2nd Street South. So those were the remaining 6 homes that we had identified initially. In order to obtain access, the attorney would first need to determine all parties involved by obtaining an owner's and encumbrance report, and then either obtain access through a consent or through a warrant through the courts. So this isn't a quick process. First, he needs to find out, and an O&E report's going to say if it's a contract for deed, who the mortgage holder is, all those things, they all have to be identified, or all have to be notified. So we're looking at an estimated cost will vary depending on whether consent can be obtained or if you need to go through the court system. He's saying that the cost to get to the point of inspection is estimated about $500 per home if it's done in a group. So we're looking about an expenditure here of about $3,000 to get to that inspection point of these 6 homes. And so what I'm asking tonight is to authorize the city attorney to proceed with obtaining access to conduct the inspections for those 6 listed homes, so the city council can then make the decision of whether we want to proceed under the Hazardous Buildings Act.
Okay. Any questions? I think the council has discussed this process several times, and we were all under the understanding that we're going to have some costs involved with moving this forward, but I think the only way to get these issues resolved is to continue to move it forward, and so I'm certainly recommending to the council that we would want to move this process forward and continue to take care of these hazardous buildings. With that, anybody have any comments or questions? Is there a motion to authorize the city attorney to proceed with obtaining access to conduct inspections for the 6 listed homes?
So moved.
Motion by Keith. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'll call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. Moving on to H, approve installation of no parking sign.
We received a request for no parking signs. This is on Linden Lane, which is by Gas Mart or Food and Fuel on the north end of town. They're asking it to be installed on the north side of Linden Lane from Highway 71 to the resident garage that's approximately 75 feet to the west. Now, Linden Lane is actually a city street. It's actually the north entrance that goes into the Gas Mart or Food and Fuel, and that goes straight into it's gravel up in there. But what the resident that is adjoining or lives next door there is requesting that we don't allow parking, or that the city restrict parking for that 75 feet, or about 4 car lengths, I think that is about. In the past, there was an agreement between the prior homeowner and the prior owner of the Gas Mart that they wouldn't have their employees park there, and so there was, some traffic came and went in there, but not a whole lot. But now there's a lot of parking going on there, and they're saying it's causing traffic congestion, and also she's saying that, when people come to look at the home, that they're interested in maybe purchasing the home, but there's always cars parked right there, and she feels that that's hindering her home sale. So she did attempt to talk to the owner and just get some reasonable, we won't have our employees parked there, but she was unsuccessful. So now she's come to the city council and she's asking, can we just post that as no parking? I know that would apply to her as well, but she understands that. And so she's just requesting that we do that. And the city council, you do have the authority to restrict parking on city streets. So that's the action requested. I mean, I provided a map in there for you. And we're requesting the authorization to installation of no parking signs on the north side of Linden Lane from Highway 71 to the west to the 100 feet, or 75 feet, I'm sorry.
Okay, we have before the city, we have a request to address some parking issues. I spent some time visiting with Vicki on this myself, trying to understand if we were law enforcement or if we're setting precedents, which is, or, truly does there need to be no parking signs in that area? And I guess I just wanted to, Vicki and I said, we had a hard time understanding, or having a recommendation, because we have a request and the council has the right to certainly determine which areas has no parking on their streets. But I guess I want to open it up to the council for discussion, and how we choose here, we'll notify the homeowner, and that's what we'll do going forward. So, council, comments or thoughts?
I guess I'm concerned and reluctant to put no parking signs in front of houses because people don't want cars parked in front of their house. That, to me, that's a rationale that could get abused in a big hurry. I mean, who wants to have everybody parking in front of your house anyway? But on the other hand, if there's an issue with safety and access, that's different, but I'm not sure that I'm hearing that. I mean, it sounds to me like it's a regular street, we allow parking on our streets. We could put some sort of parking restriction. I mean, that would make more sense to me if the issue is that it's plugged up with cars from the employees all day long, then why would we not allow a limited two-hour parking for people who are shopping there and, you know, the lot is full or something, they pull in and they just run across to go in. I'd hate to say that you can't stop there at all.
That's a good point. You know, I obviously can see their point, but yet, you know, there's a lot of other areas in town that, you know, people have got cars parked in front of their houses all the time. You know, look at Ash Street, you know, there's no parking on one whole side, then people are gonna park, they gotta park in front of the people across the street from them. They didn't have that option, you know, even though it was all decided by the public hearings, but still they got cars in front of their houses. And if I understand it right, you know, she was saying something, she thinks it's hindering the sale of their home. I don't know if we want to start getting into the habit of putting a sign up for, you know, to help someone sell their place. You know, you know, if that's the actual reason or not, I don't know if I want to go into that mode of thinking, because it could really open up a Pandora's box on everything else, because, well, they helped her with this property, see what they can help me with mine.
It's gotten tough to find a place to park on that north end of town. I know I work at the hospital, and that entire, I believe it's 4th Street, is on the north side of it. You can't park on there. And that all came due to a request for this. And there are times when our parking lot fills up, and you practically have to drive to the golf course to find a place to park. And it used to be just you bring it up to the city council, boom, and the rubber stamp that it would be no parking. And does this happen? Is it all day long that parking is full in this particular stretch? Has anyone monitored it?
I understand that that's basically where the employees park for the gas mart. You know, and there is quite a bit of traffic that comes and goes, not to go in the street, but to go in and out of their parking lot. So it's kind of it's not a typical street in that it's the parking basically for the gas mart. And so that's really the issue, is that conflicting use there.
I think it's also a little unclear as to where the street, there's no curb and things along there. So, you know, you got that issue as well right there. You know, and I kind of agree with Dave. I like the fact that prohibiting them completely seems, you know, maybe more than we want to get into, but maybe a 2-hour limit seems to make some sense. However, I would really been more entertained that the homeowner and the business owner could just worked it out like it always has in the past. And so, you know, I agree, but you know, we do have some other areas in town where we have no parking, you know, and specifically around, you know, the school area and different spots, but there's been reasoning when those typically have come in, other than, you know, I agree with Warren, you know, it's hindering the sales, a little bit of an issue that I don't really want to, I think, dive into either, but I do understand, you know, we got a homeowner that has a concern that would like us to help them address it somehow. Have we reached out? I mean, we really have no authority, say to speak, to work with the gas mart owners, or say to speak, to have them talk to one another, but have we reached out to try to help resolve the issue?
I actually had asked her, because this has been going on for about a year, and that was my encouragement, is please talk to the owner, and you guys need to work this out, you know. And she goes, well, it's really a residential street, and they're using it for their business parking, and that's not fair, and that type of thing. That's really where the issue is coming from, is that, and maybe Dave's idea is a good idea, you know, that way. And because even she had said, she goes, I don't really mind people parking there, but when it's there all day, all the time, I don't like that. And so that was kind of the conversation.
Okay.
So, and she's asking for assistance. If you decide not to do it, I can let her know that, and she can renew her efforts with the owner, or.
Do we have who's going to pay for the cost of the signs and such? Do we usually charge that? to somebody, or what's the deal with that?
Not for our street signs. There are signs we don't, because we retain those.
Okay.
They belong to us. I mean, you certainly probably could ask her to recover that cost.
You know, from the business point of view, I can see why they have, you know, if their employees park along that street, that just leaves more parking spots for customers to make it in. They're not getting, you know, it's easier access for them for their business. The other part is if we do even a 2-hour sign, who's going to enforce it? How much time and money are we going to do? Or is the homeowner going to be calling the police department every 2 hours? That car's sitting there for 10 minutes too long? You know, if it does happen, you know, that's one of them things that limited parking is fine, but unless somebody's sitting there constantly going by to check on that vehicle, it's going to be real hard to go by how long it's actually been there. And I don't know if that would create more problems than what it's worth either, you know, also.
That's, you know, another thing too, every time I've been in there, and I go in there quite a bit, there's very seldom more than 3 people working at the time. Why can't they park on the north side of the building?
Yep.
I don't know.
Why not?
Okay, well, we have a lot of great discussion, and we have to give some direction. So unless the council feels, you know, we would like staff to go back to the homeowner and the business and talk to them about some of our concerns and why we're, you know, really having a hard time coming up with an answer, I would be open to that as well. We don't need to make a decision today.
Well, that's-
We can table it, and
Yep.
first of all, I'd prefer on a situation like this, we would have a full council as well. We have 4, so I think we could table it to have staff go back and talk with the homeowner about our consideration of 2 hour, and also our thoughts, you know, in really opposition of putting the signs, and see if she can continue to have some discussion, at least, or if nothing else, reach out to the business owner to see if there's a bigger problem or another underlying issue that we're not aware of. I don't think we need to make a decision this evening. It's been going on, it sounds like, for over a year, so another month certainly isn't going to make a tremendous amount of difference. So, with that, I would ask the council to consider tabling this action tonight to our next regular scheduled meeting for council. General consent.
It's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Dave?
General consent is fine, yeah.
Okay. And staff, do you have enough information?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to item I, appointment of temporary data entry personnel for the police department.
The police secretary, Melissa Kleinschmidt, she'll soon be on FMLA leave for 6 to 8 weeks. We're asking for a temporary data entry person. It's according to the police chief, I think he left, is needed to help maintain police data during her absence. The position is expected to begin in late September. The Personnel Committee met and has recommended to hire Christy Watson from the Albany Police Department. So she has the same position as Melissa over in Albany and has all the BCA, the clearances, all that they need to have to deal with police data. The rate of pay would be $15 an hour, and we'd like to use her for up to 20 hours per week for up to 10 weeks. So the cost is approximately $3,400 if we utilize the full 20 hours a week and the full 10 weeks. So that would be your top cost. And talking to the police chief, he feels that he can fit that within his existing budget. So the Personnel Committee, I believe, is recommending the council appoint Christy Watson to fill that position at $15 an hour, 20 hours per week, up to 10 weeks.
All right. Any questions of staff? Seeing none? All right, is there a motion to council to take action and appoint Christy Watson as the Personnel Committee's recommendation as our police secretary for up to 20 hours per week, up to 10 weeks at a rate of $15 an hour?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, got a motion by Keith. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion?
Just for the public's notice, the Personnel Committee is Brad and myself.
Correct.
So,
Okay, hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor. Yeah, our fault if something don't work.
we started doing that, letting the public know who the committees are a while ago.
All right, moving on. We have no unfinished business. We have no new business, but we do have a consent agenda, so we'll quickly go through that. We have our schedule of claims for unpaid claims of $338,704.51, paid claims of $210 for a total of $338,914.51. And we also have our July checks, which is check number 1925 through 1949, and 034-117 through 034-225, as well as some payroll for a total of July checks of $451,631.72. We also have a request from Tina Rhodey, Mustang Bar, for a temporary extension of premise permit for a DJ and midget bowling on September 6, 2013. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the language I have here. But anyways, so we have a request again as an extension of the premise permit for music and a bowling event on September 6th.
I'll make the motion. We approve those.
Okay, we have motion by Keith to approve the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Warren. Any discussion? Just in regards to the extension permit, Vicki, I see it runs from 7 to 12:30, and it is the back of the Mustang and Meads. I'm assuming they were notified and approved. They approved this event?
Yes, they've been notified.
Okay. The noise, the issue about noise was brought up earlier tonight. As we have these outdoor events, do we need to take a closer look at the noise, or how do we want to look at that as we go forward with these?
As far as the noise, we try to address the noise by shortening the time, ended at 12:30 on the weekends so that they can't keep going to 1:30 or 2 o'clock. As far as how loud they can have them turned up, that might be more problematic. How are we going to measure that?
Right.
I mean, we have a noise ordinance with decibels, but we're not going to run around with a decibel meter, I think, all over town.
Have there been actual complaints other than what was brought to us tonight that you're aware of?
I didn't receive any, but I don't know. I heard them.
So I guess that would be the point I would like to make then to the general public is if they feel that the noise is of issue, they have to bring them complaints to either the police chief or to city staff or city administrator so that we can record and we can note that we had some complaints, because we really can't just change things based on one specific incident or, nothing officially reported. So I just would encourage folks that if they do believe these issues, outdoor events are causing issues, and I don't think they are by any means, but if it does become a noise problem, especially for the downtown, we're so close, then I think we want to know about it, and then we can talk with these folks when they're having the event, and I'm sure work something out with them in regards to that. But
Yeah. I heard them that night too, but the wind direction and how quiet a night it is all affects everything, because actually I didn't think it was any louder than when they had the tractor pull at the fairgrounds. I could hear that like they were next door to me then too, and I didn't hear anything there, so.
Yep.
Yeah, true enough. I've heard the tractor pull, and I'm not that close, so.
Right.
All right, very good. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. I'll call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 4 in favor, none against. Just the last thing that you had in your packet for informational purposes is there's a local board of appeal and equalization training being offered by Stearns County on November 13th from 6:30 to 9:30. Currently, Warren and Keith are certified to the end of 2014, so if anyone else wishes to take the course, please let staff know. So we have to have a minimum of one person trained. So fortunately, those guys are still on the council for a while, so we're good.
It is riveting education.
There you go. All right. Thank you very much. With that, there's nothing else on our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Motion by Warren. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dave. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion's approved. 4 in favor, none against. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.